Hey, Elliot here, checking in. How's everybody doing today? I'm feeling good with the beginning of summer, although the past few days have been a little strange in terms of weather. There were 17-mile-an-hour winds just on Tuesday, of course, when my friends and I were going to play pickleball, but that is just the way life goes sometimes. The summer is an excellent time of year because of the many opportunities it poses for all of us to get outside and enjoy the weather. Of course, if you live in a place where it is extremely hot, maybe you decide to go to the beach or do activities inside. But regardless of where you are, summer is a fun time. I know that for me, I plan to do a lot of fun activities, like basketball and pickleball, throughout the summer. Pickleball is a rising sport throughout the country, and if none of you have ever tried it, I would highly recommend it. It is very easy to learn and play, and it does not require the activity and movement that many other sports require. So, this summer should be a fun time, and I hope to see a lot of you guys outside, enjoying this beautiful world. Welcome to Checking In, everyone. Checking In is a podcast designed to empower people to speak up about their mental health in a world filled with depression, loneliness, and anxiety. On this podcast, I hope to get a diverse group of people who can share their mental health struggles and the mechanisms they have used to overcome them. In today's episode, we will discuss anxiety and the need to have high performance by talking to now junior at Boise State, Emma Flynn. Anxiety is a large issue in America and throughout the world. According to the Anxiety and Depression Association of America, around 20% of Americans have been diagnosed with anxiety, which is about 1 in every 5 people. Anxiety also affects around 4% of the population, or 300 million people around the world. But because of the high rates of anxiety in the US, Americans also make up around 20% of global anxiety diagnoses. There are also gender differences in terms of anxiety. According to the Anxiety and Depression Association of America, women are twice as likely to experience anxiety. In much of the research done on anxiety, in 2016, the Clinical Psychology Review Journal found that some of the differences in the rates of anxiety in men and women could be due to biological factors. Some of the neurotransmitters and hormones that are released in men's and women's bodies are different, leading women to be more vulnerable to anxiety. Another social factor that this 2016 Psychology Journal article found is that some of the vulnerability to anxiety may rise from the different coping mechanisms used by men and women. There are generally regarded as 2 coping mechanisms: problem-focused coping and emotion-focused coping. People with problem-focused coping tend to deal with the issue at hand bluntly because they believe they have more control over the situation. People with emotion-focused coping tend to avoid the issue and focus more on emotion because they believe they have less control over the situation. According to this article, one of the factors that may make men less vulnerable to anxiety is that they use problem-focused coping in response to stress. Contrastingly, women tend to use more emotion-focused coping. Of course, these biological and social factors do not explain all of the reasons behind the gender differences in anxiety. This is also not to say that men do not develop anxiety. There are high rates of anxiety in men in America. However, these factors may show some gender differences in anxiety in our culture. Other commonly quoted problems with anxiety are the high rates of social media in our culture. According to the Pew Research Center, around 72% of people in the United States currently use social media. Another problem is the highly individualistic American society that we live in today. America was founded on the principles of freedom and opportunity, but these positives have also led to some problems. Many people want the culture to serve them, rather than them looking to serve the culture. Thus, many of us in this nation have become stuck in a toxic loop of trying to please ourselves while not looking out for the good of others. This can naturally lead to anxiety when people do not feel they have the positive social outlets they can trust through all their trials. Finally, the standard of performance in American society is greater than it has ever been. Our culture has switched from a high school degree being the prerequisite to the workforce to now a college degree being the same. That is not to say that one cannot excel without a college degree. It is just a lot harder. This has put a lot of massive pressure on students today because they feel the enormous weight of expectations to perform and figure out what they want to do in a very individualistic culture. Today, I bring to the show Emma Ford, a junior community assistant and English literature and pre law major, who will discuss her mental health journey with anxiety and performance expectations. How are you doing today, Emma?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Could you just share your mental health journey a little bit?
Yeah, I definitely struggled with both anxiety and depression, especially in high school. It's changed a little bit since I've come to college, but it's not something I talk about all the time, but it is a huge part of my story. And it took a lot of growth and a lot of people pouring into me to be able to overcome some of those, but it's definitely something that needs to be talked about and shared for sure.
Yeah. So, could you just share where you grew up?
Yeah, I grew up in Meridian, Idaho.
Mm. And how was your family life growing up?
It was good. I was blessed with a really supportive family. My parents have always supported me in everything that I've done, as well as my sister. So yeah, super good. I'm talking to my mom every day.
Oh,
So
so you have a good relationship with them then.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. And did you ever feel any pressure from your parents to live up to expectations when you were young that they put on you, or was it a pretty positive relationship?
It was honestly super positive. My sister struggled a lot with mental health as well in high school.
Mm.
So they were super conscious of that as I entered high school. So I would say a lot of the expectations that I kind of had on myself, I put there rather than my parents, uh,
Okay.
if that makes any sense.
That definitely makes sense. I know I struggled with a lot of the same things. What were some of your favorite memories just growing up around Boise?
Yeah, honestly, pretty much everything with my family. We would just hang out all the time outside. I love being outside. You
Mm,
started this episode talking about being outside.
yeah.
My dad early on taught me how to play basketball, and that became a huge part of my growing up experience. I loved basketball and would spend a lot of time doing that. So pretty much any of those outside activities were really fun for me.
Hmm.
And Meridian in Idaho, I love so much. Want to be here for the rest of my life. So.
Oh, that's really cool.
Mhm.
And just talking about basketball, did you start that at a pretty young age?
Yeah, I started playing around 5th grade and then more competitively around 7th grade.
Okay. Yeah, that's really cool.
Mhm.
And how was your social life growing up? Did you have a lot of friends in school?
Yeah, I went to a pretty small school, so I wouldn't say a lot
Oh, yeah.
necessarily, but
Fair.
there is like kind of a benefit with going to a small school is that I can pretty much call everyone in my class my friend. So I
Right.
kind of had 49 friends, but also I had to be friends with them.
Yeah, because yeah, that makes sense. You're in the same class.
Yeah.
Um, when you were growing up with your friends, did you feel a lot of anxiety about conforming to like social norm to fit in with your friends, or was it pretty easy to just kind of hang out with people?
Yeah, I would say it was fairly easy to hang out with people. My high school was religious, and so in that sense, a lot of times I felt like I had to follow kind of like a certain religious norm, if that makes sense, to
Mm,
fit in,
yeah.
which isn't necessarily always a negative pressure. Of course, I could kind of make it my own negative pressure in a
Right.
sense, but
Yeah.
it wasn't anything really for my friends, I would say.
And what school did you attend growing up?
I went to the Ambrose School for 13 years.
13 years. So you were there from kindergarten to
Yes.
wow, that's crazy. Yeah. I know. Yeah, because I went there too, and just like I know some people were there just the whole time, which is like
Yeah. Were
wild.
you there the whole time?
No, I was there since like halfway through first grade. So I mean
So basically.
basically, yeah, I mean we could say I was for sure. Yeah. And how was your experience at Ambrose? Did you enjoy it a lot?
I would say it was generally positive. No
Yeah.
hate to Ambrose.
Yeah, no hate.
Growing up, I'm super thankful for that whole experience. I had such a great class, such great teachers.
Mm,
I think it was a lot easier in the lower grades for me to look back and appreciate those times. In high school, I was way more involved, and with being more involved and being in certain leadership positions, you see kind of the background of all of these things, which obviously
mm,
has corruption that you don't know about when you're just kind of like sitting there participating.
right. Yeah.
So in that sense, high school was a little bit harder for me to find good moments that I appreciate. But generally, I am really thankful for the education I received there and the friends that it gave me.
Mm.
But there was just some points where I was like pretty frustrated.
Yeah, no, I bet. Yeah, I feel that. Just going into high school, did you feel like a lot of high expectations just kind of going to Ambrose? Because I know it's a pretty like high achieving school.
Mhm. Yeah, I would say especially academically, there's high expectations. It's very much a school of straight A's or you're not doing good.
Right.
So there is that sort of pressure. Also, I just kind of set myself up as an extroverted leader type of person. So
Mm,
I did definitely feel pressure to be involved in a lot of clubs and organizations and be in leadership in that sense. Which again, that's not necessarily a negative pressure, but
mhm.
I could definitely turn it into one.
Right, definitely. And how do you think just like setting yourself up with all these expectations kind of affected you?
Yeah, I would say again, it was a pretty positive pressure because it pushed me to do a lot of things that I don't necessarily think I would have done otherwise. I'm not necessarily a type of person that I want to be in front of people leading all the time, but
Mm,
it pushed me to do that, and I grew a lot because of that. But it also did just mean that I was pouring into a lot of things all the time, and I think sometimes that came at the sake of pouring into myself and making sure I was being filled in high school, and finding things that I enjoyed to do instead of just doing everything that I felt like I needed to be doing.
mhm. And if you were just looking back on your high school experience, do you think that you would advise people just going into high school to like take those opportunities to like be in leadership roles?
Yeah, I would say it depends on the person. I think for me, I went into it with not the right mindset. It was more of, oh, let me look at this and I see the title and I see like what it can get me in
Mm,
my resume as I'm applying to colleges, even as I'm trying to fit
for
in
sure.
this school, versus like I can grow and be a leader here. And for that reason, it was harmful for me because then the times where I didn't perform well, I it took like a huge blow to my pride,
Okay.
and then that would affect my mental health a lot. But I
Hmm.
would say if you're the type of person that needs to be pushed and you can use that to grow in other areas that you wouldn't necessarily always want to, then that's really good. But you definitely need to reflect on your mindset and your reason for going into those things.
Yeah, that's big because I think a lot of times when we take opportunities, it's like just so we can like achieve a certain
Hmm.
goal,
Yeah.
and we're not actually enjoying the experience a lot of the time. So yeah, I think that's good. Just figuring out like what your motives are for doing that
Hmm.
is really important. So were you a pretty high achiever in terms of like academics in high school?
Um, I would say yes, but also everyone kind of was in my
Okay,
class.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
don't want to toot my own horn, but my class was just very much focused on academics, so I kind of had to be getting good
Yeah.
grades.
Dude, I remember your guys' class. You guys had like so many 4.0
Oh yeah.
students
Uh-huh.
and just like really high achievers. So yeah, that makes sense. So you were kind of in a social environment that was gonna push you to like get A's
Yeah,
then.
exactly.
And do you think that just being in that type of environment had a negative impact on your mental health in some ways? I know how you talked about like the positive of it, but
Mm.
there was some negatives too, I'm guessing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I put my identity a lot in all these various things that I was doing, whether that was academics or sports or other leadership opportunities that I was a part of in high school.
Mm,
And because of that, like I said, when those things didn't go well or I didn't perform well, then it just took a huge hit to my mental health, and I would get down on myself, and then also hide that from everyone. So I wasn't like actively seeking help or talking about it because I was kind of like upfront in leadership and didn't feel like I could necessarily have problems and have things going on in my personal life.
mhm.
So it would just kind of build up.
Yeah. By having that like negative influence on your mental health, was it a lot of telling yourself that you weren't good enough, essentially, if you weren't performing up to a certain standard? Is
Yeah.
that kind of what you?
Yeah, definitely that. And also, like, the people around me will view me differently if they know that I am, like,
Mm,
not meeting these grade point averages, not getting enough points in a game, not
mm-hmm.
planning enough events, whatever it may be.
Okay. So do you think that like it also translated to the basketball court then a little bit?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because I know that you guys made state, right? Your senior year of high school?
I think we lost districts, like the last round of districts that we were
Oh,
gonna.
gotcha.
Yeah,
So,
that's
but you guys, yeah,
fine.
that's a tough one. But you guys were like doing pretty well though, like during your
Yeah, I mean, it was almost
time.
like my mindset again was so bad in high school that it was kind of less of how is the team doing, even more
Mm,
of just like, especially my senior year, like I'm not scoring nearly as many points as I need to. in order to like achieve some certain level. So
Mm.
like even if the team as a whole wasn't doing bad and I was performing good, like I would be okay if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's interesting. So do you think that being in a certain environment of just really high achieving people can cause more of an individualistic like mindset in people where they're just kind of looking out for their own good rather than like other people?
I think it definitely can. I don't obviously want to speak for everyone that was in that environment, but
Hmm.
I have talked to quite a few people that went to the same high school as me and kind of had the same experiences, and they all felt that a little bit. I know a lot of it was just my own personal pride issues and
Mm,
issues that I needed to deal with on my own that caused that mindset, but
for
I
sure.
definitely think that pressure can go negative pretty fast.
Yeah. And do you think that having that desire to perform can be directly correlated to like an increase in anxiety?
Absolutely, yeah.
Mm. And in what ways would you say that it's like correlated to anxiety?
I just remember a lot, like, the night before I would have to do something big, just, like, overthinking everything, and the anxiety was, like, through the roof about this because
Mm,
so much of who I was and who like, how I felt I was going to be, um, viewed was based on whatever was gonna happen the next day, and that anxiety is overwhelming when you put your identity in something that's finite and that's not going to actually give you any satisfaction or lasting joy.
mhm.
Yeah, so definitely anxiety plays a huge role in that.
Yeah. And would you get like physical symptoms of just like feeling bad when you were like going through these like times of anxiety, like the night before games, like you were talking about a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. And even later on, so my senior year, like halfway through the basketball season, I tore my ACL, and that like caused me to spiral so much because I also was missing out on like all the senior year type stuff on top of
Oh
all of
yeah.
the basketball games. And I remember like I was like throwing up sick because I was like not okay mentally, and it wasn't
Mm,
even related to the surgery or anything like that. It was just I'm missing out on all of these things. No one's going to like me anymore after this because I can't finish this season. I can't finish this leadership role. I'm not there all the time to like make sure that people still like me and are accepting me. So yeah, definitely that translates to physical stuff as well, not just everything in your head.
right. Yeah. Because definitely whatever is. I always had this quote from my psychology professor this last semester where he said, everything that is psychological is simultaneously biological
Mm,
and social. So, like the things that affect us in our minds also affect our bodies and affect like
yeah,
how we interact with other people.
same.
So, I think that's like really, really important part of it too. That like when we're going through these struggles, that it can also affect how we feel physically for
Yeah,
sure.
totally.
Was there anyone that you felt like you could reach out to for support when you were like facing like these anxious battles in high school?
Yeah, honestly, looking back, there were so many people that I know would have immediately helped me, which I'm punching my past self for sure about that.
Yeah, for sure, for
I
sure.
had like the best friend ever in high school. My
Mm,
parents were supportive and also knew how to handle it because they had been through it with my sister.
okay.
And I had like mentors throughout high school that would have helped for sure. It was just also part of that pride thing. I was not willing to say that I was struggling. I think some people recognized it, and I know that they were praying for me and behind the scenes, hoping for me to say something about it.
Mm,
But I was not the type of person to reach out about it. But I know they would have supported me if I had asked.
yeah, no, that's really good. Going back to just the pride element of it, do you think that um just like pride can be like a factor in people's not wanting to speak out because they think that people are gonna think of them a certain way if they talk to someone else, just like from your own experience a little
Yeah,
bit.
that's exactly what it was like with me. I know there's so many reasons why people don't speak out about their mental health. A
Right.
lot of it is fear and all these different things, but for me it was definitely pride just because the way that I had presented myself to so many people was that I'm a strong extroverted person that would never struggle with this. And
Yeah.
because of that, I felt that if I said anything, whether that's consciously or unconsciously, I felt that if I ever said anything that people will then view me differently or think that I'm not who I said I was, kind of, or who I portrayed myself to be, if that makes sense.
Mm, yeah, that's really good because I think sometimes the images we form and our mind of like interactions with other people and how they'll view us are so different from what's actually realistic.
Mhm.
Because yeah, definitely like in my experience, I was trying to be a high achiever in high school in my grades and just like in social life, kind of the same way. And it's like you think that if you're not like kind of putting on a perfect image the whole time, that people are gonna be like, oh, like who is this guy? He's like not the same dude if you like mess up one time.
Mhm.
But yeah, definitely like it's so much better to be able to I don't know, be genuine, I guess.
Mhm.
Would you recommend like if people are struggling like with anxiety and with their performance that they just like reach out to people in their life?
Yeah, I think if you have people in your life, like it's definitely good to reflect on who you have in your life and to recognize whether they would be an asset to you. Um, I think like that's a hard step to take a lot of the time, but super important, and especially if you have people that you know to be wise and that they're wanting to help you, and that's the only attitude they would have towards that situation. That's super important. I think 9 times out of 10, reaching out is helpful, and it's very little that reaching out someone
Mm.
ends up hating you for it or judging you for it even. It's more, especially with your close friends, they just want to help you and they love you. So yeah, definitely reach out.
Yeah, just from that's good. From your own experience, if someone were to reach out to you, you'd probably be happy to like talk with them.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's really good. Like I'm kind of the same way. I'm scared to talk to people sometimes about what I'm going through, but I know if they came to me to talk about their struggles, I'd love to talk with them. So I think like we have to be able to get over the stigmatization around talking to other people about our struggles because people actually would love to talk about that and they're like happier when people will reach out and talk to them because it actually eases their like anxiety about talking about it as well, for
Yeah,
sure.
definitely. And I know from my perspective, like if I found out that my friends were struggling with mental health or like serious anxiety or depression and I didn't know about it for such a long time, that would break my heart because I
Mhm.
want to be someone that they come to. But then I look back and I'm like, I did the same thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, definitely people are always willing to listen and want to help you. So for
Mm.
sure, reach out.
Yeah, that's really good. What do you think are just some of the cultural factors that like lead to some of this like anxiety and battles with like performing and just expectations in general?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what our culture values. For me, I grew up in a culture that valued academics and honestly valued performance, I would say,
Mm.
um, just because that is something that's measurable and you can physically see.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, our culture as a whole, America, like obviously we value a college degree, like you were saying,
Yeah.
and making a certain amount of money and having the perfect family, perfect life.
Mm.
So I think there's a lot of pressure that comes with that. I think in order it's hard to overcome that, but a
Mhm.
society that values your character and who you are as a person could combat that kind of
Mm.
stigmatizing, I guess, of anxiety and depression. But right now, we're definitely set up in a way that's very, we judge who you are by your material goods and also your physical and visible actions.
That's really good. Um, from your experience, do you think that your anxiety was more influenced by your kind of biology and like who you are, your disposition, or more influenced by like your social environment?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is definitely like my family has definitely has anxiety like throughout our family and generations have struggled with that. Um,
Mm.
but it also like adds to it that I heard a lot about it growing up a little bit and I also heard a lot about it in high school, kind of like what I was saying, that idea of oh, this person like used to be really good at whatever and then now they're not as good and they don't have as many friends, they're not as successful. Like
Right.
seeing people not like fit in because they're not performing well can definitely add to your anxiety once you start to put your identity in that.
Mm.
So a little of
A little of
both.
both. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's what I've kind of found just talking to people and just like kind of reading. It's definitely not just like one or the other. It's a little bit of both biology and the environment you're put in that
Mhm.
kind of can lead to some of these mental health struggles that we all deal with.
Yeah.
So, um, moving forward a little bit, what helped you overcome these struggles?
Now we're getting to the good part.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, thankfully, I am a Christian. I follow a God that provides comfort and will come through for me. So, looking back, all of those struggles that I had in high school and still do have were honestly just learning opportunities and redirected me back to my God. So, obviously, my identity was in basketball, in academics, in leadership. And that was a time where I needed to refocus my identity in Christ and who He says I am, which is a loved child and made in His image.
Mm,
And that took me having to go through that long experience and having to sit out from a lot of those things. But my I had too much pride and it wasn't going to take me anywhere.
mm.
And in the long run, none of that matters. None of my actions or physical, visible actions mattered. All that matters was where my faith was and what I was focused on, and it was myself. But now I'm able to focus on the Father and know I'm loved by Him no matter what works I do.
That's really good. And when do you think you started to have that shift in mindset?
Um, it took a while. Coming to college has helped a lot. I would say like my senior year of high school, once I kind of like started to get out of that like depression slump after surgery and all of that, I had a lot of people that were willing to talk to me about it and that I finally opened up to, my parents being some of those people, and they were able to kind of open my eyes to what I was putting my identity in. But
Mm,
then coming to college, I don't play basketball competitively anymore and I don't necessarily do all these leadership positions. I'm not like the main Boise State person.
right. Yeah,
So
not like president or
yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
So then it kind of took like, okay, where is my meaning if I'm not doing all these different things? And I found people that I know will love me no matter how I perform.
Mm,
And kind of like learning that and talking to them about it has been really good. But kind of like we said earlier, it requires talking to people for sure, I think, and reflecting on those situations.
yeah, that's really good. I think a lot of the same happened to me, like coming to Boise State and like into a huge environment where there's so many people, just realizing that you can't really put your identity in that type of stuff anymore
Mm-hmm.
because it's not gonna last.
Exactly.
It's yeah, just important to like look outside yourself and just see what will actually hold your identity in the long term and what will allow you to actually maybe have some peace and
Mm-hmm.
joy in your life. So you had a big shift in mindset from putting your identity in what you do to putting your identity more in who you are. What kind of steps did you take to kind of like practically shift that mindset?
Yeah, I would say well, I can't really give this advice necessarily if you're not a religious person. If you're not religious, I would say the steps that you need to take is to recognize what you firmly believe in and what your values are going to be outside of just the actions that you're taking,
Mm,
and actually consider those bigger questions because at the end of the day, like that eternity, if you do believe it exists, is much, much bigger than this tiny time that we have here on earth.
mm,
But for me, it just took a lot of reflection. So I would say practically, I started journaling a lot and just writing out everything because I'm an overthinker, and a lot of times my thoughts would spiral, which would lead to my anxiety. But when I was writing them out, it would be way easier for me to see, like, okay, this first initial thought was so wrong. And then
yeah,
that just
yeah.
prevents all of those future overthinking thoughts, if that makes sense. Um,
Mm,
and then, like I said, like going and talking to people, praying with people, and just being willing to be vulnerable is so helpful, and then also will lead for you to be able to be that person for someone else down the road.
mm. Yeah, what helped you to like become more vulnerable and be like more willing to open up?
I couldn't even tell you exactly what it was. Just I guess one day being like, "Mom, I'm not gonna lie. I think I like actually have mental health problems." And then she's like, "Yeah, I know."
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, that's
And
funny.
yeah, she was just waiting for me to basically tell her, I guess.
Mm,
But honestly, that once you get past that first step of saying something, continuing to talk about it is so much easier. I think there's kind of this idea of everyone still thinks I'm perfect when honestly people probably can see that you're struggling a little bit and they're just kind of waiting for you to say something.
mm,
But it just takes courage one time and then it just gets so much easier.
mhm. Yeah, that's really good because I think that the first roadblock that is the biggest one. It's the one where you actually have to take the step to admit that there's a problem and
Mhm.
admit that maybe you're not doing okay. And
Mhm.
that's the hardest part because we all, like you were saying, live in a culture where it's so valued to put on like perfect image and perfect idea of who we are, just that we're showing to other people, just in what we do and how we interact. But um, at the end of the day, we're um, all broken people and
Mhm.
we're all struggling, and it's just important to be able to like reach out and just speak up about these issues because they are real issues in our culture. So, yeah, that's really good. What impact do you think that just like the phone and social media had on just like your experiences with anxiety?
Social media is literally the worst.
Yeah, dude.
um, as a girl, especially, comparison is such a huge issue.
Mm.
So definitely, especially when I was sitting at home, I remember like missing out on all those like senior sunset and all that sort of things.
Oh
And
yeah,
you
yeah.
see like one person post and then everyone posts, and you're
Hmm.
like, oh no, I just missed the biggest event of the year.
Right.
When in reality, like I would talk to my friends later and they're like, oh, I kind of forgot we even did that, you know? Like
Yeah.
such a little event that social media shows to be like the best thing in the world. So
Mm.
I just think social media portrays a false image of what our day to day lives really are and the struggles that individuals really have. And so to like fully base your opinion of other people and your opinion of how you relate to other people on social media can be super harmful because then you fall into the comparison game, especially as a woman. Um,
Mm.
and that can just lead down to finding your value in all these different things you're doing and how your
Hmm.
posts look and how you look and all that sort of stuff,
Right.
which is just harmful.
Yeah, it's definitely can be a bad spiraling path for sure. Do you try to limit your social media just use just to protect yourself from that?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially this year in college, I've just recognized once I start to kind of have those thoughts, just fasting social media, like completely going off it for a week. And then if I go back on and I'm still thinking that, then I go off again. That's
Mm.
been super impactful. And also just recognizing that it's just the way that you're viewing social media that's the problem. Like social media can have so many good pros. Like there's so many benefits from it. Obviously,
Right.
communication. I want to see what my friends from high school are
Yeah,
doing.
like you.
So in and of itself, I wouldn't say it's bad, but your view of it is what's harmful, and you just have to recognize how you're viewing it and if you need to take a break from it.
Mm, yeah, that's really good. Cause yeah, we were kind of talking about this in when me and my family were kind of sitting down for dinner the other day. We were kind of my brother asked the question, is technology bad
Mm.
that we have it? And the way we were kind of talking about it is it's not necessarily good or bad in and of itself. Like social media, technology, it's kind of just a tool.
Mhm.
But how we use it and how we view ourselves in light of this technology kind of is the important deciding factor for sure
Mhm.
because um, if we use it just to kind of portray a positive self-image that our life is going great and to compare ourselves to other people like you were talking about, then it can definitely go down a bad path. But if we use it for benefits, if we limit our time on it sometimes, if we realize that we're spending like too much time and going down a dark place, then it can definitely be a positive thing. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's really good. Um, and I don't think that yeah, it's not necessarily bad or good in and of itself for sure. What is some advice about mental health that you wish you had earlier?
I mean, we've already kind of touched on it, but I would say that just reaching out is so important, and also
Mm.
recognizing um the things that you're inflating in your mind. I think I did that so much, like one tiny thing that I did wrong, I'm like, everyone hates me for that. But in reality, that was just in my mind. That's something that people don't even remember happened. So
Mm.
just really taking the time to reflect and recognize the things that don't really require shouldn't require all your brain power and all your time and stress and anxiety. And also just making sure that you understand where you want to put your identity and how that's going in the long run to affect how you go about your daily life and how you view yourself and those around you.
Mhm. Yeah, that's really good. Do you think that actually going out and talking to like some of your friends about perceptions, their perceptions of you, and like just talking to them and talking through some of your worries could help ease some of the fears in your mind just of like how they would view you differently if you did something wrong.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think, especially in college, I thankfully have found people that I'm like completely willing to be vulnerable with. And a lot of that times that requires me to say things that I'm like so scared that they're going to judge me for. But
Mm,
the only thing that's come out of those conversations has been either them relating to it and having experienced the same exact thing, or them being like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you went through this and I didn't know about it. Now let me pray for you and love you even more. So I think
mm,
if I had been vulnerable in that sense, then I would have been even more grateful for the friends I had in high school and taken more advantage of those friendships, which would have only grown those friendships and also helped me a lot.
mm. Yeah, that's really good. Just having that face to face interaction with other people and just working through it with them can definitely help so much because
Hmm.
when we start thinking in our own mind and not talking about it with anyone, we can definitely begin to just, like you were saying, think about things that have no grounds in reality. Like
Hmm.
when you were talking about journaling, you said like what you would write down, you would like realize after you wrote them down that like, wait, this doesn't really make sense at all. But
Hmm.
like when you think it inside your head, it makes sense for sure.
Yeah.
What is one positive story from your own life or something you heard about overcoming mental
I would say actually just the other day I was talking to this guy, super random. I went to a trivia night. This guy like
health?
came up to us. He wanted to spread like breast cancer awareness or something.
Oh yeah.
Anyways, I go back over to his table later and I'm like, "Can I pray for you cuz your story is so cool and I like want you to be encouraged to continue to do what you're doing basically."
Right.
Um and he basically like told me this insane story about how he was like an evangelist, amazing guy. Anyways, he said,
Wow.
I know, like what the heck? That
That's
was the coolest thing
crazy,
ever.
bro.
But
Yeah.
he was saying that there was a point where he was sitting there and he was like, I can either commit suicide now or I can go use my story to help so many other people. And I think just kind of that mindset of recognizing how your actions will impact other people and also yourself is so important. Like his story is so inspiring. He's, I'm sure, changed so many people's lives, helped so
Mm,
many people. And just recognizing how even one word can help someone else is super important. And then when that comes to yourself, like in the long run, are you going to regret not saying anything? Is it going to help to just keep it all in? Probably not. So,
mm,
just one step at a time is super important. Recognizing that one small moment of courage can help you so much in the long run. And it sucks for sure in that moment, but
mhm.
it's gonna help you so much, and you're gonna look back and be grateful that you took that step for sure.
Wow. Yeah, that's really good. Because when we're in the hardest parts of our life and we want to give up, it's so easy to. But just like looking back at the joy we have now, um, just looking back and all the good that I bet that that guy's done now, just because he
Hmm.
took that one step,
Yeah.
has been probably been awesome. So
Hmm.
yeah, that's really good. So I just want to thank you so much for coming on the show and just sharing your testimony.
Thank you. This was so fun.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to run an episode again sometime for sure.
Okay, I'm down.
Yes, sir. All right. That was a really good testimony from Emma, just about her struggles with anxiety and performance and the expectations she put on herself because of her desire to achieve at a high level. In our culture, it is so easy to want to perform and want to do well because there is so much fame and glory and opportunity in America that we can achieve. America is the land of opportunity where people long to go to fulfill their dreams and gain success. And that is not necessarily a bad thing. People should want to work hard and can gain reward from doing so. But when we put our identity in what we do rather than who we are, major problems can arise, just as Emma is talking about. She began to feel very anxious because of her performance, and whenever she didn't do well enough, she would struggle and think that people would think differently of her. And that is one of the societal downfalls of American culture today, that we cannot deal with failure and loss because we feel that we are not measuring up to a certain standard, or people will see us as worse people because we weren't able to achieve what they thought we would achieve. But in reality, many of these thoughts are not truly realistic. As Emma was talking about, when she was able to share some of her feelings with her mom and how she dealt with mental health struggles, her mom said, I know. Sometimes the way we think people will respond to our mental health struggles are so much different than how they truly will. People want to talk about these issues, just as Emma said today, and she would be devastated, she said, if someone was struggling and she didn't know about it and that person didn't open up to her. So many of us are scared to talk about mental health, but we all deal with these issues, and it is so much better when we can share and help other people to do the same and talk about these issues. Through this, we can change the stigmatization around talking about mental health in our culture. And we do not have to be anxious and feel like we have to perform, but we can realize that people love us for who we are and not what we do. On this last part of the show, Hope and Healing, I just wanted to share a story about overcoming anxiety that is actually from my own life. When I first came to college, I was overwhelmed and anxious because I was moving to a completely new place. There were so many novel faces and locations where I didn't have very many relationships, and I felt like I was isolated and alone. Much like Emma, I didn't know who to talk to about these feelings of anxiety. And of course, I was still performing very well in school, just as I had always done, maintaining my GPA and continuing to seemingly have good relationships with people. But deep down, I was really struggling. Throughout the first semester, I began to form some better relationships with people, but I still felt pretty isolated and nervous about what the future might hold. Coming back second semester, I was at one of the lowest points I ever was, not knowing what major I was going to do, feeling like I might drop out of college and just end up not living up to expectations. But then I began to develop relationships with people and share about my struggles with anxiety. I began to talk it through with my friends, who I began to develop very close relationships with, and with a counselor. This helped me to understand that there were people who had my back and were going to be there with me through all of my anxiety. And I also learned through this time that I did not have to live up to any standard. People loved me for who I was, not what I do. And no matter what route I took in my life, I would still be loved and still be accepted by my community. And nothing I ever did would change it. So that is just one of the testimonies from my own life about overcoming anxiety. I would ask you guys to just speak to someone if you're struggling with anxiety and worry about the future, about your relationships, about not measuring up to a certain standard. If you're an overachiever and think that if you don't measure up, people are going to think of you differently. No. People love you for your character. They love you for who you are. So I would just encourage you to take some time today or in the next week to talk to someone and listen and share your own story. And who knows, maybe that'll make a big difference. Well, that is all the time we have for today, everyone. Follow me on Instagram and YouTube at Checking In with Elliot Ramsey. You can listen to all the episodes of the podcast on Spotify, YouTube, and RSS. If you ever need anything, just reach out. For with every battle you face, I will always be here, just checking in. Have a blessed day.